The January 6th Select Committee is preparing to spotlight the pressure then President Trump put on the U.S. Justice Department to try to overturn the 2020 presidential election. This on the eve of the next hearing. We're also learning that panel members are beefing up security because of very ugly and violent threats against them. We're joined now by a key Select Committee member, Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. I know that over the weekend you revealed that you received a very disturbing death threat directed at your family and you. Are these threats ongoing? Are you among the members who are now getting a security detail?
So look, I'll tell you, the threats are constant. They've increased. I even heard a voicemail just this morning that we got last night threatening execution. That's kind of seems to be the normal thing nowadays, was just threaten execution. But the reason I released this letter, this was sent directly to my home, directly to my wife, and it went on to threaten execution, not just of me, but of her and my 5-month-old child. And I think it was important to put out to show the depravity of what's existing out there. The fact that there are people that literally would come up with this idea of killing a 5-month-old because you disagree with me being on the January 6th committee. So we have security. We've had to up our security posture, and we're aware, but we're going to move on. It's not going to hinder us, and it's not going to intimidate us.
I've been in touch with some of your colleagues on the Select Committee, and they've been getting really ugly, threatening emails and voicemails and all sorts of things like that as well. Have they been receiving beefed up security as far as you know?
Look, I think if they need it, they're getting it. You know, the Capitol Police and all those agencies are very focused on what they need to do. But yeah, I mean, look, they're all getting these threats. I mean, particularly Liz and I, because we, are considered rhinos in the GOP because we want the truth. But what that shows is when you stir up evil, when you bring in light to a dark place, you see cockroaches get angry and scatter. And we're bringing light, we're bringing truth to the lies that have permeated many people's minds. And it's not going to make them happy.
You're referring to the Vice Chair, Liz Cheney of Wyoming. You say she's been getting these kinds of ugly death threats as well?
Well, I haven't talked to her about them, but I can make an assumption that if I am, she probably is too.
All right, let's talk about tomorrow's hearing. It's going to be very significant. I know the focus will be on the pressure that former President Trump put on the U.S. Justice Department. You're going to be leading the questioning. What can we expect to learn?
So I think what we've done so far, when January 6th happened, I think a lot of people's focus became that day and the violence, and that was important. It was a terrible day. But what a lot of people forget is all the pressure points leading up to January 6th. By the way, nothing's changed to prevent anything like that from happening again. So we saw the pressure on the vice president. We saw the pressure Tuesday very emotionally on these state leaders. And now we're going to talk about the Department of Justice. A lot of this information is known, a lot isn't. And we're going to show what happened as the president was doing his best to basically put the Department of Justice stamp on his lies and conspiracies to embolden people. So I would encourage folks to tune in and see yet another prong of what the former president tried to do to take away, no matter who you voted for, to take away your vote.
Yeah, we'll be watching, of course. The former Trump White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, isn't appearing publicly, we understand, but did your committee actually tape his closed-door interview with the panel? Will we see or hear any of that tomorrow?
Well, I don't want to get into the details of what you'll see or hear tomorrow. I will say this. We do want Pat Cipollone to come in and cooperate more. You're going to see tomorrow men that did not necessarily want to be out there talking about this stuff, but they understand their oath to the Constitution and their responsibility to the country. We want Pat Cipollone to come in and cooperate in a robust way. There's no reason he shouldn't, and we hope to see more of that.
Was his closed-door interview with the panel on tape? Did you record it?
Again, I don't want to go into the details because we may or may not talk about some of that tomorrow, but we certainly want to talk to him again, and we hope he obliges.
Let's see if he does. Will you provide any more information, Congressman, on the Republican members of Congress your committee says actually requested pardons from then President Trump?
Again, I wish I could give you all that preview, but I'd say tune in tomorrow. We're going to do a very fulsome look at this aspect about DOJ, and we'll see if that question you ask is addressed or not. But just know we continue to get new information. literally daily, new tips that come in, new information. This investigation isn't over. This is us presenting what we've seen so far.
Well, speaking of new information, I know you've said you've seen at least some of the footage from this British filmmaker, Alex Holder, who was filming with the Trump campaign before and after January 6th. How revealing is this footage?
So, look, it's anytime you get any more information, particularly when it's close to family or close to the former president, we're very interested in that. There are areas where we think we're very interested and we can piece together. But I'll leave that to the investigators that are going through that. They know the depth of where they would like to see that plugged in, what it confirms, what it denies. But I appreciate the filmmaker doing it. He was asked to, he was subpoenaed, and it worked out well. It's what he should do.
Your committee chairman, Benny Thompson, says Ginni Thomas, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, has responded to your committee's request to speak with her. Do you expect her to testify publicly or privately?
My expectation would be probably privately, a deposition. We'll see what those details are. Look, we're not out to get anybody, but it's obvious that she has said, and we have seen things, that she may know stuff. We hope she comes in and doesn't plead the fifth like some have. Some are concerned about what it means for their own self. Just come in and tell us the truth. Again, we're not out to get anybody, and I hope it's obvious that, despite what some of my colleagues in my party try to say, this is partisan. This isn't partisan. This is a American investigation to put out the facts. And by the way, if there's anything partisan about it, it's that all the witnesses have been Republicans, mostly appointed by Donald Trump.
We're grateful to you, Congressman, for all you're doing. Stay safe over there. Please give our best wishes to your family as well. Congressman Adam Kinzinger, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Coming up, President Biden calls on Congress. We expect to see more disturbing testimony tomorrow when the January 6th Select Committee takes a deep dive into then President Trump's attempts to influence the U.S. Justice Department. But tonight, there are new questions, very serious questions, about testimony we've already seen from a key witness, Ivanka Trump. Here's our justice correspondent, Jessica Schneider.
Tonight, new evidence is emerging as the January 6th committee prepares to hold its fifth public hearing tomorrow. That new information includes extensive footage from a British filmmaker who interviewed former President Trump, his family, and others. A source tells CNN it includes an interview with Ivanka Trump from mid-December 2020, where she says her father should, quote, continue to fight until every legal remedy is exhausted. Her comments then seemed to contradict what she told the committee under oath at a deposition, acknowledging she believed then Attorney General Bill Barr when he told her in November 2020 that there was no widespread election fraud.
How did that affect your perspective about the election when Attorney General Barr made that statement?
It affected my perspective. I respect Attorney General Barr. So I accepted what he was saying.
According to extremist experts, calls for violence against members of the committee are circulating on some of the same online platforms that helped fuel the lies that led to the insurrection. Members have told CNN they are taking additional precautions, and several have security details.
I had no involvement in an ultimate slate of electors.
Tonight, Senator Ron Johnson is denying any role getting the name of fake electors into then Vice President Mike Pence's hands after the committee unveiled texts Tuesday showing one of his staffers texting an aide to Pence saying Johnson wanted to hand-deliver slates of fake electors for Trump from Michigan and Wisconsin to replace the legitimate ones for Biden.
We got handed an envelope that was supposed to go to the vice president. I didn't know. So we called out the vice president. He didn't want it. We didn't deliver it. It's not a story, guys. This is such a non-story.
The committee is now continuing its push for Trump's White House counsel Pat Cipollone to testify publicly after he spoke with them behind closed doors.
Our committee is certain that Donald Trump does not want Mr. Cipollone to testify here.
And Chairman Benny Thompson says Ginni Thomas has responded to the committee's request to speak with her, but no word on when that will happen or if it will be public. On Thursday, former top officials from the Justice Department will testify about how they pushed back on Trump's pressure campaign to overturn the election, including then acting Attorney General Jeff Rosen and his deputy, Richard Donahue.
And I recall toward the end saying, what you're proposing is nothing less than the United States Justice Department meddling in the outcome of a presidential election.
And after tomorrow's hearing, the committee is actually delaying all future hearings until mid-July because of what Congressman Jamie Raskin calls a deluge of new evidence. That includes that new documentary material, plus new tips that have been coming in to the committee's tip line. Wolf?
Jessica Schneider reporting for us. Thank you very, very much. So let's bring in our legal and political experts, including CNN's chief legal analyst, Jeffrey Toobin, CNN's senior legal analyst, Laura Coates, and our chief political correspondent, Dana Bash, is standing by as well. Laura, what do you make of the discrepancy between what Ivanka was telling the filmmaker in these interviews back in December versus what she actually told the Select Committee under oath behind closed doors?
Well, it's called the oath. It's the idea of one might lead you to being accountable, perhaps in a court of law, in a court of public opinion, perhaps at the congressional level. And the other is ability to essentially try to go along with whatever was stated inside the White House and maybe placate those around you. You see, the oath is intended to give people the truth serum and actually to have them tell you what they were truly thinking under the threat of additional consequences. A documentary filmmaker is about a legacy, about trying to craft a narrative. The testimony in front of the congressional committee is just that, testifying under oath with the hopes that the honesty essentially will set you free.
You know, Jeffrey, this British filmmaker was documenting the final weeks of the Trump campaign and reportedly interviewed Trump himself directly after the January 6th attack. How critical is this evidence potentially?
Well, potentially it's very important because, so much of the issue in this investigation is what is Donald Trump's state of mind? What was he really thinking as the election aftermath took place? Was he honestly of the belief that he had won and honestly pushing for votes to be counted? Or did he know he lost? And was he just using whatever corrupt mechanism was available to him to overturn the election? What did he think about the election? Did he really know that he'd lost? Because we know he lost because we know how the votes were counted. But did he know? That's certainly what I would be looking for in the taped interviews in real time of his state of mind right after the election.
Yeah, good point. Laura, what does it say that the committee is already planning for another round of hearings next month as clearly more and more evidence is pouring in?
Well, on the one hand, it suggests that they maybe are not thinking about the sort of Damocles of the midterm elections as people have thought, that they're not under this sort of time pressure of just trying to get things done with an eye towards a political clock, but the idea of trying to allow for time for it to breathe. When new evidence and information is coming in that they've asked and requested from the archives and beyond, the documentary filmmaker, and they're going to allow the time it's going to take to have a holistic and thorough review. Now, that should undercut any accusations that they are either partisan or that they are attempting in some ways to just try to have the world drink from a fire hose. It should be very, very encouraging. On the other hand, however, they're up against the clock of the attention span of the American electorate and the frustration we've seen in the past when people have said, look, this is going on too long. Can we either move on or go beyond this? And so they're battling sort of this delicate dance right now, Wolf, of how much is too much, how long is too long. And I'm not sure they've got the right calculus yet.
Yeah, I want to bring in Dana Bash into this conversation. Dana, how important will it be to hear tomorrow from these former Department of Justice officials who were interacting directly with then President Trump?
Incredibly important. We saw the state version of this yesterday, which was tremendously powerful to hear from top Republicans talking about the pressure they were feeling on a state level. This is going to be that plus because it is going to be the former president's own top justice officials, how he was trying to use a federal government to keep himself in power. And so that is going to add a more fulsome view to the very, very widespread painting that this committee is picture that this committee is painting about the lengths to which Donald Trump was going to stay in office, and will paint some version of a coup if these people are going to testify the way we believe that that they have done behind closed doors.
And the key thing about these witnesses, like the previous witnesses, is that they're all Republicans. They are all loyalists who can't be accused of being like Adam Schiff, a political opponent of the president's, whether you had the vice president's staff on the first day or the state officials, Republican officials the second day. Now we have Republican Justice Department officials. These are not Democratic partisans. They are people who were trying to do the right thing, or so it appears.
And Dana, these Justice Department witnesses who will testify tomorrow aren't necessarily household names. But Steve Engel was actually in a meeting where Mr. Trump held what was being described as an apprentice-style contest over whether to fire the head of the Justice Department. That's pretty extraordinary, isn't it?
It is so extraordinary. And whether to fire the head of the Justice Department for one reason, apparently, and we're going to hear presumably from him in his own words tomorrow. And that reason is because they weren't going along with his scheme to stay in office despite the will of the people, which was the opposite of that. And so, again, I think what Jeffrey just said over.
Yeah, we're just losing your audio a little bit, Dana. Thank you very much, Laura Coates, Jeffrey Toobin, guys. Thanks to you as well. Just ahead, I'll ask Select Committee. Tonight, lawmakers, including top Democrats, are balking at President Biden's call for a 3-month suspension of the federal gas tax as Americans have been paying record prices at the pump. CNN senior White House correspondent Phil Mattingly is joining us right now. He's got the latest. So, Phil, what exactly is the president proposing?
You know, Wolf, over the course of the last several months, White House officials have been urgently meeting behind the scenes, trying to figure out options to deal with a policy, or at least an issue when it comes to gas prices, largely devoid of federal policy options. The president today deciding to endorse a 3-month federal gas tax holiday. That's the 18.3 cents the federal government takes each gallon of gas you pump. The president also put his support behind states doing the same thing with their gas taxes as well. The president making clear this would be modest in terms of whether it would get passed down to consumers, but it would be something at a moment where Americans are increasingly concerned about gas prices that have averaged $5 a gallon. Now, the president also had very sharp words for the oil and gas industry. Take a listen.
My message is simple to the companies running gas stations and setting those prices at the pump. This is a time of war, global peril, Ukraine. These are not normal times. Bring down the price you are charging at the pump to reflect the cost you are paying for the product. Do it now. Do it today.
An urgent message, a message to some degree of desperation, and a message that comes the day before the White House senior team and Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm are expected to attend an emergency meeting at the White House with oil and gas executives. But Wolf, you mentioned it up top. A key point here when you talk about the federal gas tax holiday is this. It has to pass the United States Congress. At this point, it doesn't look like there's going to be any support to do so, not just in the Senate, where they would need 10 Republicans to support it, but also the House. Speaker Nancy Pelosi giving a rather tepid response when asked about, or when she put out a statement earlier today, not even committing to a vote, Wolf, saying she'll talk to her caucus about it.
Yeah, they're not even clear that all the Democrats in the Senate are going to vote for it. Phil Mattingly reporting for us from the White House. Thanks very much. Let's bring in CNN's Pete Montine right now. He's at a gas station in Alexandria, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. Pete, these are big questions. So there are major questions still about whether a 3-month gas tax holiday would even help consumers much, right?
That's right, Wolf. A gallon of regular here in Alexandria, Virginia, $4.85. And this federal gas tax holiday could bring that down to $4.67. But some of the biggest critics of this plan say the savings in all of this are not all that certain.
It's crazy.
Jasmine Jenkins says she is leaving Los Angeles after paying $6.99 per gallon of gasoline, but knows there is no running away from high prices. After the national average for a gallon of regular peaked at $5.01 last Tuesday, AAA says the average has dropped, but only to $4.96.
I don't know what's going on, like why we're still paying so much for gas. I mean, it's an everyday necessity.
They need relief now.
President Joe Biden insists his newest proposal is a start at addressing soaring prices, a 90-day suspension of the 18-cent federal tax imposed on each gallon of gas. But even fellow Democrats like House Transportation Chair Peter DeFazio say a gas tax holiday will take a multi-billion-dollar chunk out of a fund that repairs roads and bridges.
It's not going to provide significant savings at the pump.
There are also questions about whether savings will even get passed on to consumers. One report cautions that oil companies and distributors could pocket more than 80% of the savings.
It's an attempt to provide some relief, but the people who are screwing the American consumers are the oil companies.
This newest attempt comes after years of skepticism over gas tax holidays. Even the president's former boss, then candidate Barack Obama, poured cold water on the idea in April 2008.
We're arguing over a gimmick to save you half a tank of gas over the course of the entire summer so that everyone in Washington can pat themselves on the back and say that they did something.
In the conditions that we're in today, that's not a gimmick. That's a little bit of breathing room for the American people as we get into the summer driving season.
Biden's announcement comes a week before AAA anticipates 42 million drivers to start hitting the road for the long July 4th weekend, undaunted by pain at the pump.
Maybe folks have decided to dial down the scope of their vacations. Maybe they're going to do something that I've heard called a nearcation. They're not going to go quite as far away.
For Jasmine Jenkins, the solution is now picking up extra shifts at work and staying home more, since a gas tax holiday will not be enough for her July 4th holiday.
Cutting gas taxes may be a temporary fix, but we need something to get this kind of handled, to get the reins on this. It's ridiculous.
There is one more maneuver left here. States can pause their own gas taxes, something that some states did at the outset of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which initially caused these prices to spike in a big way. The Biden administration says if states act on their own, it could lead to an average of a 30-cent savings per gallon of gas for Americans. Wolf.
All right, Pete Montine in Alexandria, Virginia for us. Thank you very much. Just ahead, gun safety legislation in sight for the first time in decades. The Senate is now poised to pass the country's first gun safety legislation in decades with bipartisan support following the deadly mass shootings in Buffalo and Uvalde, Texas. Our congressional correspondent, Jessica Dean, is working the story for us. Jessica, this is very significant. If this bill passes, it will be the most significant gun legislation here in the United States in nearly 30 years. Give us the latest.
All right, so the latest tonight, Wolf, is that we are seeing this process play out here in the Senate. They did their first procedural vote last night to move it forward. We saw 14 Senate Republicans supporting this legislation, and we also know that the lead Republican negotiator on this, Senator John Cornyn of Texas, spoke at the GOP luncheon today here at the Senate to his fellow Republican senators, trying to grow support for this bill as they head into future votes that are likely to happen starting tomorrow. And what he did was talk about some of the NRA wins that they got into this legislation, even though that powerful gun lobby does not support this gun safety legislation. But he talked about the fact that closing the boyfriend loophole will not be retroactive. He also mentioned that they will sunset in a 10-year provision that will allow them to check juvenile records for gun buyers ages 18 to 21. He talked about mental health funding and hardening school security. Again, Wolf trying to build even more support as they head into the next procedural vote for this. And just in terms of big picture, Wolf, they do think that they are on track to get this bill passed before they leave for the July 4th recess. That was a very ambitious timeline, but it is one that these negotiators really wanted to keep to. And at this point, it appears like that is going to happen, Wolf.
As you point out, the deal has the support of Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate. But for the Republican leadership in the House, it's clearly a very different story, right?
That's right. We're hearing very different things from House GOP leadership, with the number one House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy coming out against this bill, as well as Steve Scalise, Elise Stefanik. So the top three GOP Republicans, or the top three House Republicans coming out against this bill, and not just coming out against it, but actually whipping votes against this bill as well. But we do expect to still see some bipartisan support out of the House. We know that the congressman that represents Uvalde, Texas, plans to vote in support of this bill. But Wolf, it really shows you that stark contrast within the Republican Party. You see the the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell supporting this legislation. You're seeing the House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy against it, and it really shows you that divide.
Jessica Dean up on Capitol Hill, thank you very, very much.